Line breaking, tap tearing up Maul's back.
Here we go.
Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, checking in live right here in frigid North Texas. Frigid, that's kind of relative, I know. We're talking to John Funk. He sent me an email today, and it's kind of cool up there in mid-Michigan. But you know what? Holy cow, we got some cold weather going on. So tonight I thought I'd talk about how different fish reproduce and what this frigid weather is going to do to your pond. So here we go. I'm ready to do this. Now, guys, y'all know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like. Share this to your timeline, and you are eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Right there. There's one, living color. I kind of keep this one stashed back so I can show you. Because if I don't, Leanne will send it to somebody special, which is fine with me. And a Pond Boss mug. Say it with me. That knows how to. Yeah, that's right. Knows how to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. Speaking of cold, holy cow, it's about every 10 or 15 years, probably up here, we get one of these real frigid polar vortices that kind of slips its way down and just knocks on our door down here in Texas, and it gets pretty cold. So we haven't been above freezing now in about 36 hours, which I know. I'm not whining about it. I'm just informing people. I get it, I get it. If you're in the Midwest, South Dakota, Michigan, Montana, up through there, you guys deal with this all the time. So we're supposed to be below zero with a high in the teens on Monday, which is pretty out of character. And that's fine. That's nature. That's what we do. We live with it. So what I'm thinking is I want to talk to you about what that means to your pond. I just saw Mark Primo on here, I think. And Mark, dude, if it gets into the 20s in South Louisiana, Ron Ardoin, our buddies down there in South Louisiana, you guys are going to need to be talking about this kind of stuff because it's going to make a difference in just exactly what happens with your ponds. Because, in the Midwestern and Northern states, you have this thing there called ice. The only time we have ice is in a glass of tea. And so you guys are insulated up north and in the Midwest from these frigid temperatures. We're not. Last week I checked 2 ponds and the temperatures were in the mid-50s. They're not today. They're in the mid-30s. So when you talk about the temperature of a pond dropping as much as 20 degrees, in just a matter of 3 or 4 days, that's pretty harsh. That can actually hurt your fish. Where you folks in the Midwest and northern ponds, northern parts of the country, it ain't going to hurt you. Okay, so I'm going to do what I do here with my laptop, and so I can be sure and see what's going on here. Make sure I can see everybody. Holy cow, there's already a lot of comments. What's going on? Brian Baker, John Funk, Harrison Davis, Russell Whitting. I know there's a lot more people on here. Good gosh, we got 60 people watching this already, and I've missed most of you. Mark Dyer, Michael Gray checking in from Nashville, Tennessee. Holy cow. Hard water in northeast Oklahoma. Brian Baker, I bet you that's the case. The cool thing about being in northeast Oklahoma where you've got hard water, this polar vortex is not going to hurt you. It's going to hurt us. It's going to kill threadfin shad. It's very likely going to kill some great big largemouth bass, Florida strain bass. And it's going to be fascinating to kind of follow up and study on that because great big largemouth bass, they don't like rapid temperature changes. It's not that they can't take colder water. It's just they can't take it going from the mid-50s, to 33 degrees in 3 days. That's just harsh. That's hard on them. Same thing with copper-nosed bluegill, for example. Justin Schenk, I see Justin checking in from the left coast. Danny Mack, we love Danny Mack. Danny Mack is one of these deep thinkers from San Antonio. There's Kenny Sanderson. We love Kenny. Kenny had a great article in Pond Boss a few issues ago about collecting walleye eggs and how to propagate walleye to stock them in public waters. But the principles were fantastic. If you've not read that story, you need to go back and get that back issue of Pond Boss. Speaking of Pond Boss, $35 a year right there. Here it is. Cheaper than a Friday night date. Lasts a whole year. You get a lot of nuggets out of that. You get some momentary pleasure out of that Friday night date, but you're going to get a lifetime worth of nuggets that will help you take care of your pond. $35 a year. Go to pondboss.com. Subscribe to Pond Boss. $35. Ain't that big a deal, but it is a big deal because you need to be part of this family and help fuel the economy of this deal. See Billy Bates checking in. Kim Moore checking in. Mark Hicks, Mark Dyer, -8 in Nebraska this weekend. You know what? It's kind of hard for me to relate to -8, but I'm going to get to relate to -1 or 2 or 3, which, every 15 years or so here, we get that. It just doesn't last long. But we're in for, looks like about 6 days where it won't get above freezing, which is not normal here. That's not normal. And, I don't care. It's just the ponds care. And they're going to respond to that. And what I'll probably do is kick on the well. Tony Sutton, I've got you. Tony, you asked a question on one of these feeds here a few weeks ago, and I snagged that and wrote about it in the next issue of Pond Boss. And basically the question was, will threadfin shad thrive north of Interstate 40? The answer to that is no. They're not going to thrive, especially when you get a cold front like this. And the question that you had that day was, what about golden shiners compared to threadfin shad? Well, in a minute, I'm going to start kind of talking about how those different fish reproduce. And what I'm going to try to do is tie all that together and how you can use that to manage your ponds and lakes. That's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to scroll through here. Mike Cottrell checking in. Mike, you're going to get some pretty dadgum cold weather. There's Vito. Hi, Vito, checking in from Whitesboro, America, right up the road. Holy cow, Mike McPherson. There's Mark Primo. I knew he was there. Kim Moore from Illinois. Blair Ulrig. John Funk. Nice warm weather in sunny Texas. Yeah, we hadn't had any sun in 4 or 5 days. Actually, you know what we've had? It's been kind of crazy. It's been 28 degrees steady for over the last 24 hours, and we've had fog. And the fog is kind of grabbing onto the trees and creating ice. So there's little bitty icicles. It's not like a true ice storm, but the fog, I guess probably 300 or 400 feet above the ground level, it's above freezing. But as that fog migrates down and hits us, it starts freezing on stuff. It's freezing on the bridges, freezing on the trees, freezing on fences. Got little bitty, tiny little icicles hanging off of barbed wire. Which here in Texas, barbed wire is about the only thing we've got to slow the wind down. Harrison Davis, 68, near Atlanta. Well, that's good while it lasts. If you don't get this polar vortex, at least you can hear about it tonight. Billy Bates, Snowy, Maryland. Mike Augustine. Hey, Mike. Good to see you, buddy. He's down from the Metroplex. Jacob West. We love Jacob from Denison, Texas. And St. Joe, Texas. Bob Mayer from Aiken, South Cackalack. James Sewell from Forney, Texas. Ed Tyndall, Auburn, Alabama. Sean Peters checking in from Nebraska. JM10, Georgia. Doug Brown, Georgia. We got a bunch of Georgia folks tonight. That's cool. Drew Bachman. Drew, I got your pictures. You emailed me. I haven't had a chance to look at them. I've been, today I proofread the next issue of Pond Boss, which takes me about 6 hours to proofread that thing. Just to kind of let y'all know what happens is whenever I get stories from my writers, I edit those stories, and then I write the stories that I need to write for the magazine, submit them to Layout, and then Layout, Rob Hudgens, who is an outstanding graphics designer, he puts the magazine together, and then he sends it back to me, and he sends it to Leanne. And Leanne's basically looking at advertisers, ads, things like that, make sure they're placed right and that they're looking good. My job is to go back through all the copy, make sure the captions are right, make sure the stories are right. So I spent about 6 hours today proofreading the next issue of Pond Boss, got it finished, wrote my editor's letter, so it's gone back to Layout. It'll be up at the printer's office here on probably Friday afternoon. And it'll get printed and get mailed. There's David Schnaderman checking in. David Schnaderman, Easy Docks of Texas. Look him up. The guy's a stud. Wayne Lancaster. Wayne and Josie. Got to talk to Josie on the phone last week. Josie got to talk to Debbie. We're going to try to see if we can connect the dots and have lunch with you guys here in a few weeks. We have a contract on Lusk Lodge, 2. We're scheduled to close in later on this month. Probably going to carry over into March because we're waiting on the survey to get done. And Debbie and I will be officially homeless. I've never been excited about being homeless, but I'm pretty excited about it now. We got a new chapter. For those of y'all, Jacob knows this. Jacob West knows this. Anybody that knows this knows that when Debbie and I start talking, we're a pretty entertaining couple to be around because we don't agree on a lot. Because we're kind of polar opposites. The way I think is different than the way she thinks. And I told Debbie the other day that she and I need to sit down and write a book. And the title of that book will be, We're Never on the Same Page, but Together We've Written a Book. Well, now we're going to close a chapter and start a new chapter. And we're both pretty excited about that. So time will tell where we're going. I'm not going to do anything any different. You know, I'm going to keep designing lakes, keep doing my show. I just may end up doing my show from an RV more than I do from here. Of course, Debbie's told me anywhere we wind up, she will create a set like this. She did all this. I didn't do it. She did it. And we'll keep rocking and rolling and doing what we do. Colder in Texas than Pennsylvania next week. You know, Drew, hey, we need to talk to Drew. Drew's thinking he wants to come to Texas so he can warm up. Don't come in the next 5 or 6 days. Ain't that right, Wayne? Bill Russell, always look forward to seeing your show. Thanks, Bill. Jim Schuessler at Ensburg, Missouri. Good to see that. Still no magazine. That just pisses me off. You know, I'm going to go on a little tiny rant. Less than 30 seconds. We pay the post office to deliver our magazine. We pay them. We write them a great big check. And when they don't deliver the magazine, then we have to send another one first class from here without any consequences to the post office. I kind of get that because we mail it from Georgia. How many absentee ballots were mailed in Georgia in January? You know, so I kind of get that. But hey, post office, pull your heads out, do your job. Because we have great customers, great subscribers that want to get their magazine. You know, so it's frustrating to them and frustrating to us. So, hey, post office, postmaster, if you're listening, man up, get it done. There's my rant. Y'all are laughing at that. I hope you're laughing at that. So let's see. John Henry, wish I was in Texas out of the ice here in Arkansas. Is it that way? Are you iced up there? Hey, there's Josie. Yeah, you know what? We can be homeless together. You and Wayne and Debbie and I, we can go to Granbury and sit down and commiserate about our homelessness. You know, it'll be kind of fun. Chris Blood checking in from Texas Hunter. They're one of our main sponsors. I love Chris Blood. I love Texas Hunter. Might as well talk about that right now. Texas Hunter is, they are absolutely the best fish feeder company out there. Customer service is the best. Products are the best. Chris Blood checking in. Well, you know what? I'll tell you this, Chris. Debbie's thinking about couch hopping. I'm not too good at that. I ain't much on sleeping on the couch. I don't mind a cot, which I may just take one with me. I don't know, but we'll see. So let's see what Mark Hicks says. Mark Hicks got a question. Are fish kills due to sudden temperature drops a good thing for overpopulated ponds, or will it kill desirable trophies first? Ooh, that's a great question. JM10, no magazine either. You know what? If you guys haven't gotten your magazine, drop us an email. It's way, way more important to me that you get your magazine than how competent the damn post office is. So let us know if you've subscribed and you haven't gotten your January, February issue of the magazine yet. Here we are. I mean, we mailed this thing December 23rd. 23rd, before Christmas, it was mailed. If you don't have it, let us know and we'll send you another one. Mitchell Jordan just got his today. That's crazy. Mark Hicks. Fish kills due to a sudden temperature drop. Well, those are, I tell you what typically happens on a fish kill that's related to a sudden temperature drop. What usually happens there is the biggest, older fish are the weakest fish. Now that's unless they're in excellent body condition going into the winter. So if your fish were fed well, they're in good shape, they had stored a little bit of body fat, going into the winter. If your biggest fish die in the winter, it's because they weren't in the best shape going into the winter or they were older. Now, the different fish die in colder weather because of their lack of tolerance. Threadfin shad, 42 degrees, they're dead. Copper-nosed bluegill, they drop 25 degrees. Their metabolism rate slows way, way down. They go from like this in the water to like this, lay on the bottom. They actually suffocate. Giant Florida strain largemouth bass, if the temperature drops 25 degrees over 4 or 5 days, they can do the same thing. And the biggest fish are usually the ones that are affected the hardest. So, now, I'm going to keep on scrolling down here, but I do want to talk about it. Billy Bates, love your politics. I tell you what, I saw what politics did to the Dixie Chicks. I guess now they call themselves the Chicks. My opinions about fish mean something. My opinions about politics mean nothing except to my inner circle. So, being knocking on the door of 66 years of age, I've learned that my politics don't matter. But you better listen to what I got to tell you about fish and ponds and water, because I live, eat, and breathe that stuff. Let's see here. Josie's chuckling. Danny Mac, the clear package may entice postal theft. You know what, Danny? That's pretty funny. It's ironic because when the total reason that we put the magazine in a plastic bag was because of postal theft. And it wasn't really postal theft. Some of the postal workers were keeping people's magazines, reading them, and then delivered them 2 or 3 weeks late. And they admitted that, which I think is just freaking hilarious. So that's why we even put them in the dadgum bags in the first place. Let's see here. I got to get my stuff going on here. My little mouse is acting funny. Okay, I'm also having trouble with my Netflix films. Okay. Okay, Harrison Davis. I get that. That's kind of cute. I'm going to go back here. Look here. Let's see here. Okay, Josie, give them hell our tax dollars at work. Yeah, you know what? That's ridiculous because the post office is tax funded. It's not those 48-cent stamps or whatever the hell they are. It's taxpayer money. I get it. Jesse Harding from Natural Waterscapes. Get that plug in there, buddy. Let them know about you. Kenny Sanderson just ordered 4 new Texas Hunter feeders. Billy Bates ordered a Texas Hunter feeder. Holy cow, Chris Blood, are you watching all this? John Henry's close to Hatchie Coon Club. I've been there probably 10 times. That is one of the coolest fishing clubs. Hatchie Coon, which that's in a part of Arkansas where in the late 1800s there was an earthquake that made the Mississippi River run backwards. It collapsed that area about 25 or 30 feet vertically, created whole new ecosystems. Okay, my throat's already going. We've only been in this 20 minutes. Put a little nectar on it. Maybe that'll help. Jeff Wallen, should I be concerned I have one diffuser going and the pond is frozen over? Does that mean the bottom water is the same as the top? Shut it down 2 other diffusers 2 weeks ago, Central Illinois. The one is in 8 feet deep, water main leak. You know what? I'll tell you what. Jeff, if you want to keep running that aeration system at 8 feet deep, you're okay with that because you still have a thermal refuge. That's the key thing. Thermal refuge. The water 18 feet deep is going to be in the 40s, upper 30s, lower 40s. The water 8 feet deep, especially if you have a hole in the ice where you're running your diffuser, that water is going to be 32, 33 degrees. It can't be 32, it'll be ice. It'll be 32, 33. So the answer to that is keep running the diffuser. Be sure that the ice is safe. Safe for people, safe for animals. I still hadn't talked about fish sex. Good gosh. Let me see what else we got here. How many fathead minnows should I put in a 3-acre pond that has small bass? 0. No fathead minnows. Stock some adult bluegills in that pond. I don't know why I'm so stopped up, but by golly, I am. No fathead minnows, Ed. Stock adult bluegills. Feed them. Do that. Do that mid-March. Adult bluegills meaning that they're big enough to not get eaten by your bass. Here's the deal. I'll explain that just for a minute. Fathead minnows, $10 a pound. Takes 10 pounds of fathead minnows for your bass to gain a pound. That was $100. You can spend that money on 2 bags of fish food, which will take you way further. You want fish that can establish themselves and begin to reproduce. That's bluegills in Mississippi. Harrison's having a hard time getting his Netflix films. Yep, there you go. I got it. Hey, Josh Flowers checking in. He's over here at Whitesboro. Frank James, would feeding trout in such cold temperatures put them at risk? No, it will not. If they are at risk, they won't eat. So, if they're, rainbow trout will feed all the way down into the upper 30s, although they prefer the 50s. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to cut short tonight. I can see it coming. How well do pallets hold up as fish attractors? They do pretty good. They do pretty good, especially if you bundle them. If you'll put 7 or 8 pallets together, just nail them together as you stack them up, they're pretty good habitat. They're real good for fathead minnows, where fathead minnows won't get eradicated. I see all that. I see you guys talking to each other. Keep it up. Okay, so my topic is talking about fish egg development. Ron Ardoin, who's working tonight, he sent me an email today asking me about, are fish eggs developing now? The answer to that is yes. And when we get this frigid weather, does that change the way the eggs develop? No, it really doesn't. It just slows them down. Now, what happens is when fish begin to develop eggs, they develop those eggs until they're mature, then they spawn. Like, for example, let's just take largemouth bass. Largemouth bass, as soon as they spawn their eggs, which largemouth bass may spawn twice. On a rare occasion, they'll spawn 3 times through the course of a spring and early summer. And when they finish laying their eggs, they start developing new eggs. And it takes 10 months to develop those eggs. So right now they're developing eggs. Now they have to have good nutrition. They've got to have some stores of body fat. They need to have the bodies in good shape to develop enough healthy eggs to be able to reproduce. So the way that works is each species of fish is different. Like gizzard shad, they're going to lay all their eggs at one time. They're all going to be gone. It's going to take them a year to develop eggs again, then they'll do it again. Largemouth bass, it's going to take them 10 months to develop their eggs. Now, their eggs really escalate development about now because the photoperiod's getting longer. It's totally photoperiod related with some influence by temperature. So when the days start getting longer, that's nature's signal to our fish to develop their eggs, which they do. They'll do that. And so as we get further into the spring and the temperature starts to go up, the whole process expedites. Now, what will happen with bluegills, for example, they'll develop their eggs over about a 45-day period, 50-day period. Then they're going to lay their eggs in the cycle of a full moon. They'll take them another 45 days to develop eggs again. So bluegill will typically have what we call a rolling spawn, because they'll have their eggs, lay their eggs, develop their eggs, lay their eggs, then do it again. Where it takes bass 10 months to develop their ovaries full of eggs. Gizzard shad, a year. Threadfin shad, they're going to develop their eggs about every 60 days. They're going to lay their eggs every 60 days based on the temperature and photoperiod. So, the different species of fish, red ear sunfish, smallmouth bass, hybrid stripers. Wait, hybrid stripers might develop eggs, but they're not fertile and can't be fertilized because they're triploid, or not triploids, they're hybrids. so they can't reproduce. Fathead minnows develop eggs, females develop their eggs about every 30 to 40 days, and they'll continually spawn. So all these different species of fish are developing their eggs at different rates through the course of a year, a season. And a lot of that's triggered by photoperiod. So as the photoperiod escalates and increases, we get to the vernal equinox in summer, then they start slowing down on their egg development. But between now and then, egg development's going to be really rocking and rolling. Gizzard shad, threadfin shad, each one of these species of fish develops eggs in a different way. So, I think it's part of your job as a pond manager or a pond owner to understand how these different fish develop their eggs so you can use that to your pond's advantage. If you know that largemouth bass are going to start laying their eggs, I think I'm going to tell you a story. Yep. Back in 1980, when I hung up my shingle, I just had a sneezing fit before the show started, so I'm real stopped up. I got to meet Buzz Hartley Fish Farms in Kingman, Kansas. I learned more from that guy in a year than I probably did the whole time I was at Texas A&M studying about fish. Well, one of the things that he told me that just stuck in my mind is when you see redbud trees begin to bloom, that's when crappie are spawning. That's when stripers are coming upstream. Largemouth bass are on the backside of their spawns. When the bullfrogs start to croak, largemouth bass are on their nests. Well, being a young, dumb guy right out of college, I didn't quite get it. What do bullfrogs have to do with bass spawns? Because when he said, when the bullfrogs are croaking, bass are spawning. Well, I thought, holy cow, how does a bullfrog know that? Well, as I got a little older, a little smarter, and been there, done that kind of a deal, I figured out that what actually happens is bullfrogs come out and start to croak and reproduce about the same temperature the largemouth bass are spawning. So one of the ways that God does what God does to keep his species pure and intact, he uses photoperiod, temperature, and cycles, phases of the moon. So, red ear sunfish, green sunfish, long ears, bluegill, warmouth, all these different sunfish, how do they keep their species from crossing? It all has to do with different variations of temperature, photoperiod, and phases of the moon. Even though a lot of those fish, now warmouth don't spawn in craters like bluegill do, but red ear do. Red ear just spawn in off cycles of the moon, while bluegill are spawning in cycles of the moon. So when there's a full moon out, bluegill are going to spawn, but the darker the moon, red ear are going to spawn. Now there's some crossover. There's some horny males out there sometimes. They'll say, hey, wait a minute, come here, bluegill babe, I'm a red ear, and they'll breed and you'll get some natural hybridization. I see that fairly common, and so, but it's all related to that. So you need to know that. So here we go. Let's see here. Brock Wren is purchasing 100 to 150 pounds of crawfish for a 10-acre pond with existing large. Is it worth the money? Yeah, I'm going to say it is. I'm going to tell you that it is. And here's how I'm going to justify that, Brock. There's Christopher Aguilar. I was thinking about you a while ago, talking about you guys. It's going to be kind of cold down there in South LA in a few days. Purchasing 100 to 150 pounds of crawfish for a 10-acre pond. There's two things about that, Brock. Number one is, if you get them in there with a good survival rate, with low mortality rate, then you're going to see the chance that they can establish. If they can establish, then you have a perpetual population of crawfish. That's one point. The second point is, if you buy them right for $2 a pound or whatever you can get them during the season, that's a pretty good bang for the buck because of the nutrition that brings to your bass, especially during the spawn. So just a little bit of a nudge nutritionally, if you'll spend a couple of $100, $200 to $300 on those crawfish, it's not a bad bang for the buck. Now, if you're going to do that with Fathead minnows, spend $1,000. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's well more worth it to use crawfish for that. So there you go. All right, my second topic I was going to hit, unless you guys have some topics. Let's see here. Brent Warman, Jason Altizer, Kendall Brown. There's Chuck Brinkman checking in. You know, I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing who all's on here tonight for some reason. I don't know that. I don't know why. I'm going to scroll back and make sure that I haven't missed anybody. Scrolling down my laptop, looking for love in all the right places. Okay, we handled Mark Hicks. We got Chris Blood. There's Josie. Okay, now I'm going to scroll back down here. Then I'm going to hit this other topic. And we'll go to town on that. Let's see here. Y'all do a song and dance during the dadgum impeachment hearings. All right, Mark. Oh, there's Mark Dyer. He's got something. Let's see what Mark's got here. Started my own new chapter. Just moved to a house on an older developed sand pit that's silted from everyone's leaves. I want to add spawning habitat to aid recruitment of bluegill, CR. I guess that's crappie and largemouth bass. I like to use cut-off bottoms of feeder tubs with gravel rock in it, clustered to 3 to 5 with PVC brush structures, separating the feeder tub clusters for fry refuge. I think that's a great idea. Do it. Just be sure that you know that bluegill are going to spawn in shallow water, less than 3 feet deep, typically. Uh-oh. It just scrolled up here. Will bluegill use those as well as bass, or do I need some rectangular bed areas for smaller gravel? Is there a better arrangement of man-made structures I could put in? What depth? Place them in shallow water. It won't take long for the fish to tell you. You know, the bass are going to spawn earlier than the bluegill will. But if you can have those structures in water 18 inches to 3 feet deep, I think you'll see your bluegill use them, especially if that's their best choice. There you go. Holy cow, there's John Wilson checking in. Christopher Aguilar, we're thinking about buying a bass, but what's your favorite brand? What's my favorite brand? Depends on your use. You know, I love Johnny Morris. I've gotten to know him quite a bit. So his tracker boats are highly affordable, functional, easy to use, but then also like Triton boats. But you know what? I'm probably not going to buy a bass boat, but I'll be happy to go with you and yours. Anybody have any luck getting crawfish to reproduce in a large tank for release in your pond and for bait? Yeah, let me tell you how that works. The different species of crawfish have different habitat requirements to be able to reproduce. If you can understand the kind of crawfish you're getting and understand their habitat, and you can provide that, they will reproduce. You know, like White River crawfish up in Arkansas, they're going to reproduce in mats of vegetation. So if you got mats of vegetation, they're going to spawn in it. Red swamp crawfish from South Louisiana, they're going to burrow into clay and leave a chimney about that tall above the ground that's going to tear up your lawnmower when you run over it. If you've got good heavy clay, they'll spawn in it. If you don't, if it's sandy, they're not going to spawn in it. Not going to reproduce in it. Connor Osowski, female-only largemouth bass with forward stocking plan. Any suggestions or tips? Ironically, in the March-April issue, I have written an article about all female largemouth bass lakes, and then Dave Beasley makes reference to all female largemouth bass lakes. So, there you go. So, Connor, here's what I'm going to tell you. It takes 10 pounds of forage fish for a bass to gain a pound. Every single all-female largemouth bass lake that I've worked on requires supplemental stocking at some point. And it's because as those girls get bigger, their food habits get bigger. So they have a tendency to overeat a certain niche of sizes of bait fish. And if you're not continually either growing those fish into that niche or providing them, you're going to have a void, and those girls are going to slow down their growth rates. So you got to pay attention to that with all females, because if they're not reproducing and they're all growing at the same rate, and you got a whole bunch of girl bass that are 17 inches or bigger, they're going to be feeding on bigger forage fish. So you end up with an abundance of like little bitty threadfin shad or little bitty bluegill about that big, stuff like that. So you got to pay attention to that and make sure that you're providing the right size forage at the right times for those girl bass as they're growing. Let me see. Let me scroll back down here because I missed something. I saw something here. Ty Rob, will flathead or channel catfish negatively affect largemouth bass size and populations? Yes, they will. Flathead catfish are they're even greater predators than largemouth bass because they get a lot bigger. They could get to be 25 or 30 pounds. A 30-pound flathead catfish will eat a 5-pound bass or kill it if it comes into its zone. So flathead catfish are gigantic, top-line aggressive predator fish. So even if they don't disrupt your bigger bass, they're going to totally compete in the same food chain. Now the good news is the pond can't support as many flatheads as it can largemouth bass. And that's just the nature of their ability to reproduce. Even though flatheads can reproduce well, survival rates of baby flathead catfish are low. Very low. Fish hatcheries, if they tried to reproduce and grow baby flatheads, they struggle to do it because nobody knows what a baby flathead eats. So they can't provide it when they need it. Channel catfish, on the other hand, a 2.5-pound channel cat competes in the food chain with a 1-pound bass. So they do compete. Now, people kind of think that channel catfish are scavengers. They're absolutely not scavengers. Now, they're in the fisheries business, in the biology business, we call them opportunistic omnivores. Ooh, write those two big words down. They're like teenagers. They're going to go to the refrigerator looking for meat. If they can't find any meat, they'll eat vegetables. Channel cat are that way. But, a 10-pound channel catfish will eat a 1-pound bass. I've seen them do it. So, yes, they can negatively affect largemouth bass size. Now, there is a caveat. You can partially extract competition between channel catfish and largemouth bass by feeding the catfish. Those catfish, if there's a welfare check in the mailbox, they'll come get it. So when that feeder goes off, they'll be there like clockwork. And if they don't have to go out and hunt, they're less likely to. Now, you can't take that instinct out of them. They're going to go eat, So if they're hungry and there's a 1-pound bluegill swim by and they want to eat it, they'll eat it. But you can minimize that by the amount of fish food that you feed those channel cat. Richard Parrish, thinking about stocking F1 females only in a new pond. Since there will be no males to spawn with, will that give them more opportunity to grow larger? Absolutely, yes, it will. But like I said a while ago, you got to be sure as they grow, a 4-pound bass feeds differently than a 1-pound bass, whether it's a boy or a girl. An 8-pound bass feeds differently than a 4-pound bass. It's all related to mouth size and age. The older these bass get, their food habits change. They're a lot more fickle. Where an 8 or 9 or like a 12-pound bass, it's fickle. It may not eat for 2 days, but when it does, it might eat a 3-pound channel catfish or a 3-pound bass or a 2-pound bluegill and choke to death on it. So yes, yes, they can grow larger, similar to small male bluegills being pushed off the spawning area by larger males. Yeah, you can kind of I think you can make that correlation, but the bottom line is you're going to have to be paying close attention to providing the right size classes of forage fish as those girls grow up. Christopher Aguilar, crawfish mounds everywhere there. They're about to emerge. Your crawfish are just about to emerge there in South Louisiana, Southeast Texas, Alabama. Mark Dyer, if I were to add a barrel or two for channel catfish, what depth would I put those? And will they use it year-round so I can catch them from them? No, they won't use them year-round. So here's what Mark is asking, is will channel catfish go into these barrels? Yes, they will. They do that during spawning season. The spawning season, depending on where you are, what latitude you are, like here in Texas, they're going to spawn the last 2 weeks of May, first week of June. That's the only time they'll go in those barrels. Now, here's the secret. If you're going to go, noodling or grappling or whatever you want to call it, they're going to be in those barrels for about 2 to 3 weeks of the year. And those barrels need to be in water 3 to 4 feet deep. One end of the barrel is open with a little bit of a lip on it. So if you're going to use like a 35-gallon barrel, don't take the whole lid off. Put the lid on it, but leave a lip. So maybe 1/3 of the barrel. And if you're going to do that, to keep the fish from scarring themselves up, if you're going to take a torch and cut part of that barrel lid, take a piece of garden hose and split it and put it over that cut piece of the barrel lid. That way the fish can go across it without scraping themselves up and damaging themselves. So there's your PETA suggestion for the day. I hate PETA. But to answer your question, they won't use them year round. They will go in there and reproduce. Now, put them in, here's the way you do it. Put them in water 3 to 4 feet deep. Mark them with a decoy or a float so you can find them. And know that they're going to go in there in spawning season, face the open end of the barrel to the south. That's got everything to do with photo period as the sun goes across through the day. And don't ask me why, because, I'll tell you why. They are triggered by sunlight. So when those fish go in and they begin to reproduce, they'll take the females in. The females will lay their eggs. The males will fertilize them. Then the male stays with the eggs until they hatch. So it takes anywhere from 10 to 16 days for those eggs to hatch. Then it takes 3 or 4 more days for them to absorb their yolk. Then the male will switch those baby fish out, and then he's done. And they'll sit on one batch of eggs each year. And so that takes 3 weeks or so to do that. So there you go. Isn't it amazing the stuff that you get to hear? And what's really fun is y'all can go check me out and make sure I'm right. All right, let's see what Harrison Davis has got here. He says, is there a certain low water temperature that kills off phytoplankton, or is it more that a certain low water temperature plankton can't photosynthesize? It's more of a certain low water temperature kills the plankton. So phytoplankton, only different species of phytoplankton, which are almost all are algae related, they have a lower temperature tolerance. And once you get to that temperature tolerance, they just die off. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's not there for them to grow. It is. Because as long as there's nutrients dissolved in the water, when that temperature gets right, those phytoplankton are going to kick in gear and they're going to begin to grow and feed and absorb those nutrients because they've got the right temperature, they got sunlight, and they have the nutrients. So they're going to grow. But when the temperature drops, it's going to be more like the temperature causes them to die. That's a good question. It's not because they can't photosynthesize, it's because they just can't live in that temperature. It's like stick an Eskimo in Houston in August and see how that works out. I love Eskimos. Okay, Frank James, sorry for the second question. Hey, no apologies here. I have a forage pond. Yeah, I know, I got to see it. Maximum depth around 8 feet, full of copper-nosed bluegill. Would it be smart to put them into the main pond before the 8-degree weather hits? No, it would not. You know what? I'm going to think through that with you, Frank. Would it be smart to put them into the main pond before the 8-degree temperature weather hits? Here's the problem with that. If you were going to put them into the main lake, that should have happened in October or November. If you do it now, you've got the stress of handling them, putting them into the main lake. So you kind of got a conundrum. If you could drain your pond and put them in that way, I'd say that probably makes pretty good sense. I don't know your water clarity. You know what? Frank, you got a little bit of a pickle there. If you move them now before the water temperature plummets, they'll probably be okay if you can get them out. You know, the problem is going to be the stress of handling them in cold water. Copper-nosed don't like to be handled in cold water. So you've got the pickle that you're in is it's already pretty dadgum cold, and if you move them, the stress of handling them could be an issue. If you don't move them, how fast the water temperature drops could be an issue. I tell you what I'd be thinking about doing, Frank. If you could set it up to where you could pump water off the bottom of your lake and pump it into the hatchery pond over about a 24-hour period and raise that pond level up with that warmer weather, I think you could hedge your bets and minimize the risk of losing those coppernose. Chance Birch checking in. Hey, Bob, what bait fish reproduced more? What bait fish reproduced more? Or one of the best opportunity to establish the quick? Bluegill. Absolutely bluegill. That's it. That's your best bait fish in South Alabama. South AL bluegills. Coppernose bluegills in South Alabama. Danny Mac. My 2 16-pound channel cats don't move very fast, and they scoop up about 4 ounces of food daily. You know what? You know what's really funny about Danny Mac? I believe that 4 ounces. There's nobody else watching the show. If you told me you're feeding 4 ounces, that I would actually believe it. But Danny Mac, if he said he's feeding 4 ounces, I believe it, because he's going to know. But, yeah, they don't move very fast because they don't. You know, the thing about fish is they're cold-blooded. So that means that they're going to respond based on the temperature of the water. And so when those fish, like Danny Mac's fish, are moving back and forth real slowly, that doesn't mean that they won't eat. Doesn't mean that they don't need the nutrition, because they do. It just means that their metabolism rate slowed down. When their metabolism rate is slow, they're going to move slow. You want to take a minute. Also, I want to thank Purina Mills. Talking about fish food, I love the fact that Purina Mills has helped this industry so much. Matter of fact, I was looking the other day. Here's a couple of letters. This one is dated August the 7th, 1995. It was a response to the original letter that we sent to Purina Mills. We sent a letter back then and said, hey, we want you to advertise in the magazine. And the consequence of that was, here they are right here, the inside front cover. They've been there since this letter was written. You know, and Walter came across these letters and brought them to me the other day. And I just love it. You know, it's Scott Hohensee, or if you're watching, and some of the other guys. Hey, it says August 4, 1995. Thanks so much for the wonderful experience last week. As always, I enjoy discussing ways we can help each other's businesses. On and on and on. So it's talking about things that we can do to work together with Purina Mills. And since then, since 1995, they've worked with us, with Pond Boss, and with me, and with a bunch of guys that are in the Pond Boss family to help develop some of the best fish foods that are out there on the market. Here's the first letter. This was in May of 1995. By far the most enjoyable business trip in 2 years. Please pass this along to the nice folks that offered the accommodations in the lake, how much we enjoyed it. So Brad Shue, Gordon Ballum, and John Meadows. Brad Shue is still with Purina. Gordon Ballum just retired here within the last year. But I love Purina Mills because they have worked really hard to help develop products for you and for me, you know, for our industry. And my hat's off to those guys, and I thank them for their sponsorship. Let's see here. Christopher Aguilar, will my fish get cold next week with this weather? Yeah, they're going to get cold. They might your fish, Christopher Aguilar, might shiver. Robert Dyer, is it safe to say that Mark Dyer would be better off using mineral tub bases 3 to 6 feet deep with gravel for individual largemouth bass to spawn, and then place plastic kiddie pools that are considerably larger for bluegill colonies in the shallower water? The answer to that is a yes. Yes, Robert Dyer, that's a good question. So the answer to that is yes. Ty Rob, is there any way to have success to get walleye to spawn in an 8-acre lake? No, there is not. Now, you ought to get in touch with Kenny Sanderson. Kenny can tell you all about that. As a matter of fact, go back and look in the back issues of Pond Boss, because Kenny had one of the best articles we've ever published about walleye spawning. If you're going to try to get walleye to establish in your pond, the smartest thing to do is either buy a quadrillion fry in the spring or wait in the fall and then buy some advanced fingerlings, because they are not going to reproduce in your ponds. So there's Kenny. Kenny's already responded. Let's see here. Jim 10, great show, just can't write that fast. Well, you know, the good news is you can go back and watch it again. Mark Dyer, lake regulation is no bass or walleye may be kept to aid in keeping shad and rough fish numbers down. Would it be better to stock wipers or tiger muskies to help aid that problem? I'm going to tell you the answer to that is yes. Now, that is a qualified yes, because you really need to have an evaluation of that fishery done so you can figure out how many of those species would be helpful. You know, I don't know that I would rely totally on bass and walleye to keep shad and rough fish down. I think tiger muskies and wipers are a great idea. and part of the reason they're such a good idea is they don't reproduce. You know, tiger muskies don't spawn. They'll get to be 40 inches long, and they will eat the heck out of gizzard shad, but they'll also eat a bass. You know, so as long as you know that, and you understand that they have a role, by all means, I think that using hybrid stripers and tiger muskies with the explicit reason to keep gizzard shad and trash fish down, that's a good way to go. Chuck Brinkman loves PETA. People eating tasty animals. I'm right there. Let's see here. I see you, David Schneiderman. I'm coming to you, buddy. Christopher Aguilar, when do the shiners reproduce? Well, in South Louisiana, that's going to be late March, early April. Arkansas is going to be early to mid-April. If it's going to be Missouri, it's going to be late April to early May. So it's all based on temperature there and somewhat on photo period. David Schneiderman, Aquamax MVP versus Aquamax 500. Feed store only has 500. They can order it. Don't let them tell you they can't. Now, David, I know your pond, and Aquamax 500 is a good choice for your pond. Now, once those fish start to grow up and get bigger, MVP will be a better choice, but you're about 9 months away from that. If a feed dealer has Aquamax 500, they can have MVP because they order it from the same source. Look at there, Ty Robb and Kenny Sanderson are having a talk. I love it. Well, so now I'm going to start kind of wrapping up a little bit. Just know that egg development is going on right now. Those fish are developing their eggs, and the pace is going faster. Now, here's a pretty interesting tidbit. Earlier I said that largemouth bass may spawn twice, sometimes on a rare occasion 3 times. It's not their nature to do that. But what happens is if your big girls, your big girl bass are in great shape, well, they're developing those eggs in their ovaries are shaped like that. Well, those ovaries are only vasculated on the outside. They're not vasculated in the middle. So as those eggs are developing, the eggs on the outside are the ones that are going to develop better. So what happens is when it comes time to spawn, they will lay a percentage of their eggs. They may lay 75% of their eggs that have been vasculated enough to develop to the point that they're mature. So they'll lay those eggs, and then the remaining eggs in the ovaries will continue to mature and develop until the next phase of the full moon. That's when those eggs will be spawned. So it's not like a bass is going to lay their eggs and then develop more eggs and do it again. It doesn't work that way. It takes them about 10 months to develop their eggs and about 2 months, sometimes 3 months of phases of the full moon to lay all those eggs. Where bluegill, they don't, an 8-pound female bass may have 250,000 eggs, where a 2-pound female bluegill may have 2,000 to 4,000 eggs. So she can afford to develop those eggs in cycles for a rolling spawn to perpetuate the species. Eggs are there to perpetuate the species. When a fish reproduces, its ultimate natural goal is to replace itself. And that ought to give you some insight to survival rates. It ought to give you some insight to ultimate growth rates and sizes. So when you start kind of thinking about all that stuff, it's pretty fascinating, you know. And when you start thinking about it's a fish eat fish world, as those fish are spawned, something's going to eat them. Their survival rates may be low depending on the timing. So it's pretty good stuff. There's Ron. He's late. He just got here because he's working. You know, when you're on the payroll, you kind of got to do what the boss says, Big Ron. But I did talk about eggs a lot because you asked that question. Okay, I'm going to start kind of wrapping up. Go home. Spend a little time with my wife. We got a fire in the fireplace. Got a little firewood today. So I'm going to kind of start wrapping it up. You know, I do want to tell you, keep on doing what you're doing. I love the fact that you guys watch this show. I deeply appreciate it. I don't get it, but I like it. You know, so it's either informative or entertaining or both. So I do appreciate that. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this video to your timeline. You're eligible for a Pond Boss hat, a drawing, which whenever Leanne does the drawing, she'll tell me. Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug. Say it, Jacob West. If you're still there, I can hear you. Knows how to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. We don't know how it knows, but it does. $35 a year for Pond Boss Magazine. This really is the economy that fuels this show. Now, I'm working on some other things to help fuel the economy, like the Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology online. We're way into that. I'm hoping to launch that by the end of March. As we get there, I'll let you know, and we'll rock and roll. So, I tell you what, I really do appreciate you guys watching this show, you guys and gals, everybody. And I'm going to wrap it up, call it a day, and go home to Lusk Lodge, 2 for one of the last times. We're supposed to close February 23rd, which I don't think that's going to happen because the survey's not done yet. But I'm going to go enjoy my wife, enjoy the fireplace, and see if we can find something. Chris Blood, love you, man. Appreciate you guys. John Elmer, thank you. You guys carry on. And until next Wednesday, thanks for watching. Adios.